Have you ever wondered why you can, absolutely ace a complex English grammar test on paper, but then you just completely freeze up during a high-stakes business meeting?
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
Right. Or why is it that some professionals effortlessly command these global teams, projecting immense authority, while others, despite decades of studying and thousands of dollars spent on tutors, they still sound like they're stiffly reading from a high school textbook?
Exactly. Like they're just reciting words.
Yeah, exactly. What if practically everything you thought you knew about reaching advanced fluency as an adult was actually actively slowing you down? Welcome to Everyday English Flow, daily English practice, natural speaking, and effortless listening flow. Speak.
It's great to be here.
Today, we are on a very specific, highly targeted mission. We are doing a deep dive into the ultimate system for rapid English fluency, tailored precisely for busy, high-performing adults. We're going to deconstruct exactly what it takes to bridge that deeply frustrating gap between knowing the language intellectually and, actually commanding a room with it.
It is arguably the most critical problem faced by language learners today. And I am incredibly glad we're taking the time to dissect the underlying mechanics of it. When we look at the modern landscape of advanced language acquisition, it's just filled with these incredibly ambitious college students, seasoned executives, and brilliant technical professionals who are just completely weighed down by absolutely packed schedules.
Yeah, they're juggling so much already.
Right. These are individuals who are juggling full-time, demanding careers, heavy academic course loads, family responsibilities, and on top of all of that, they're trying to achieve a level of English fluency that allows them to be truly authoritative in their respective fields.
Which is a massive undertaking.
It really is. But the foundational issue, the reason they're experiencing so much friction, is that they're using the wrong tools for their specific cognitive profile. Traditional language learning methods, those dull rote memorization drills.
Of the word.
Yeah, the endless repetitive grammar worksheets, the generic vocabulary lists, those were fundamentally designed for teenagers sitting in highly structured, low-stakes classroom environments.
Right, where you have nothing but time and a teacher guiding you.
Exactly. When you force a busy, highly stressed adult brain to use a system designed for a developing child's brain, it inevitably leads to massive cognitive overwhelm, severe burnout, and this lingering toxic feeling that they just aren't, gifted at languages. And I want to say it right out of the gate, that is completely untrue.
I think that's a crucial distinction to make right at the start. It is not about inherent intelligence or some magical linguistic talent, right? It's entirely about cognitive strategy and resource management. And before we really get into the weeds today, I want to give you the learning in numbers. It is believed by top linguists and cognitive scientists that true advanced fluency isn't about brute forcing vocabulary into your brain late at night while you're exhausted.
Absolutely not. That's a recipe for disaster.
It's about highly strategic, actionable tactics that align precisely with how a mature adult brain actually processes, encodes, and automates new information. So, for this deep dive, we are going to unpack exactly 10 strategic rules for rapid fluency. Think of this as your new operational blueprint.
10 rules. That's a solid framework.
Yeah, and as a special heads up, there is a highly effective, incredibly valuable bonus at the very end of this deep dive that creates a massive synergy between all these different rules, so you definitely want to stick around for that.
We certainly have a tremendous amount of ground to cover, so let me give you the exact roadmap for what you can expect in our first block of time together. In the next 10 minutes, we are going to learn how to instantly upgrade your professional vocabulary without sitting down and memorizing huge, isolated lists.
Thank goodness nobody has time for that.
Right. We are also going to explore how to transform your dead time into a powerful, frictionless English immersion environment. We're going to look under the hood at the exact mechanics of why your progress might have slowed down, and most importantly, how to instantly restart that engine.
Which actually brings up a really perfect, highly relevant piece of language for our listeners right now. We need to talk about the phrasal verb stall out.
Oh, that's a great one to cover.
Yeah, so when we look at highly dedicated adult learners, so many of them eventually reach a point where they stall out. If you were to say in a professional context, despite studying every day, his progress began to stall out, you're communicating that he stopped making forward progress.
Right, it's like hitting a wall.
Exactly. To stall out originally refers to an engine, like an airplane or a car engine, that stops running because it loses power or momentum. In language learning, it means you reach a frustrating plateau where no matter how hard you press the gas pedal, no matter how many hours you study, the vehicle just isn't moving forward anymore. The effort no longer matches the output.
And that feeling is so incredibly common.
It is, and that is exactly the frustration we are going to completely eliminate today, starting with the very foundation of how you expose yourself to the language and the quality of that exposure. So if we are building this new operational blueprint, the immediate first question is vocabulary. How do we sound more professional without spending hours with flashcards?
Well, that brings us directly to a phenomenon that is incredibly common among advanced learners. We can call it over-reliance syndrome. Think back to when you first started seriously learning the language. You worked incredibly hard to master the 2,000 most common high-frequency words in English.
Right, the basics.
Yeah, you learned words like big, good, important, bad, and change. And hitting that milestone is fantastic because it gives you functional, survival-level English. You can navigate a city, you can order food, you can express basic desires.
You can basically get by.
Exactly. But then a psychological trap opens up. Because those words are so reliable and so easily accessible in your memory, you start relying exclusively on those 2,000 words for absolutely everything.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem occurs when you take those basic survival-level words into a C1-level professional environment. If you rely heavily on big and good in a high-stakes corporate environment, your communication sounds incredibly flat. You could have absolutely flawless grammar, perfect verb tenses, perfect prepositions, but using basic vocabulary makes you sound less capable, less precise, and ultimately less authoritative to native speakers.
I think I see what you're getting at. It's like a master carpenter showing up to build a multi-million-dollar custom home, but the only tool he brings is a standard hammer.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. Now, a hammer is essential. It's the very first tool you buy, and you can absolutely bang some pieces of scrap wood together to make a rough, functional shelter. But to build a beautiful, structurally sound, highly customized house, a hammer isn't enough. You need precise, specialized tools. You need a laser level, a specific type of chisel, a high-powered specialized saw. In language, those specialized tools are your advanced, nuanced vocabulary.
Exactly. You don't throw the hammer away. You still need the word big for everyday life. But you need to know when the situation demands that you pick up a more precise tool. Let's look at a realistic corporate scenario.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say you are a project manager presenting a critical quarterly update to your executive board. If you stand up and say, we had a big problem with the software, but we found a good solution, and this is very important for the company moving forward, you have technically communicated the bare minimum of the facts. Everyone in the room understands you.
Right, they get the point.
But it completely lacks impact. It doesn't signal high-level analytical thinking. It sounds like a summary a middle schooler would give.
Wow, yeah. And in those rooms, perception is reality. If you sound simplistic, they might subconsciously assume your analysis of the business problem is also simplistic. So, what are the precise tools that elevate that exact scenario? Let's look at a couple of words that instantly change the entire temperature of that room.
Let's do it.
Instead of saying something is very important, you want to reach for the word pivotal. Pivotal is an adjective that means of crucial importance in relation to the development or success of something else. To give you an example, the new marketing strategy was pivotal to the company's success. Think of a pivot point, the exact central pin that an entire mechanism turns on. If it breaks, the whole thing stops.
That's a fantastic word. It completely shifts the tone.
It does. And instead of just saying you had a big problem, you could deploy the word systemic. Systemic is an adjective, meaning affecting the whole system, the entire structure, not just a localized or isolated part. For example, the software crash wasn't a quick glitch. It was a systemic failure. Do you hear the massive difference in authority there? When you use systemic instead of big, you instantly sound like an architect. You sound like someone who deeply understands the complex underlying infrastructure of the issue.
And that is the true hidden power of what we call the synonym swap, which is our rule number 1. Notice that you already inherently understand the core concept of important or big. You are not trying to learn a brand new, highly abstract philosophical idea from scratch.
Right, the concept is already there.
Exactly. You are simply taking a concept you already know intimately, and you are attaching a more sophisticated, highly nuanced label to it. However, the real barrier isn't understanding this concept. It's execution. How do you actually implement this without it turning into a massive, exhausting homework assignment? Because if it feels like homework, A busy adult will abandon it by Tuesday.
Absolutely, they'll just drop it.
Implementation has to be frictionless and highly efficient. So there is a very focused five-step behavioral habit to execute this synonym swap. Step one is the audit phase. You have to identify an overused word in your own active vocabulary. You do this by listening to yourself in meetings, or much easier, look back at the last 20 emails you sent. Do you constantly write significant? Do you always default to major? You just pick one single word that you are overusing.
I'm guessing step 2 isn't just opening a thesaurus, closing your eyes, and picking the longest, most complicated synonym you can find, right? Because context is incredibly tricky. If I realize I use the word big way too much, and I swap it out for gargantuan in an email about a minor software bug, I'm going to sound absolutely ridiculous to my engineering team.
Exactly. Indiscriminate swapping is incredibly dangerous. So step two is about anchoring the word to your specific reality. You write down 3 real-life example sentences relevant to your specific job where you would naturally use that basic word. You don't invent generic sentences about a dog chasing a ball. If you work in supply chain logistics, you write down a sentence you actually said yesterday, like, "We are facing a big delay at the port."
Okay, so I have my 3 deeply relevant real-world sentences. Now I need to find the right tool.
That's step 3. Now you expand your toolkit. You use a high-quality dictionary or thesaurus and find 2 or 3 suitable professional replacements for that basic word. But as you rightly pointed out, they must match the exact context of your industry. Enormous and substantial both mean big. But you wouldn't tell your board you had an enormous delay. You would inform them you were facing a substantial delay. The professional context dictates the precise tool.
So I found my precise synonym. I've swapped big for substantial. What is step 4? Because right now this just exists on a piece of paper. How do I get it into my brain?
Step 4 is where the actual physiological training happens. You rewrite your 3 sentences using the new word, and you must read those new sentences aloud every single day for just 3 to 5 minutes.
Read them aloud. I have to push back here because I know exactly what our listeners are thinking. Sitting in a cubicle or a home office, muttering business sentences to yourself feels objectively ridiculous. Why is the speaking part so vital? If I have a photographic memory and I can just read them silently and remember them, isn't that enough?
It absolutely is not enough, and it has to do with the motor cortex of your brain. Reading silently only engages the visual and analytical processing centers. When you speak aloud, you are physically training the muscles in your mouth, your tongue, your jaw, and your vocal cords to form the physical shape of a new sound sequence. You are building muscle memory.
Oh, wow. So it's a physical exercise.
Yes. Furthermore, you are training your own ear to hear your own voice utilizing advanced vocabulary. You are building a neurological auditory feedback loop. If you only ever read a word silently, when you try to use it in a high-pressure meeting, your brain will physically hesitate because it has never commanded your mouth to execute that specific sequence of movements before. Reading aloud bridges the gap between passive recognition and active, spontaneous production.
That is fascinating. You are essentially doing reps in the gym, getting used to the physical sensation of speaking at a higher level so it doesn't feel foreign in the moment. And what is the final step to solidify this?
Step 5 requires a bit of conscious bravery. You must consciously force yourself to use that new word in a real, live speaking or writing situation until it becomes your absolute default. You have to deploy it in the field. When you are typing your next Slack message to your team, intentionally delete big and type systemic. It will feel forced the first 3 times. By the 10th time, it will be an automatic reflex. Over time, this simple 5-step process built incredible cognitive flexibility without ever feeling like traditional studying.
I absolutely love the practicality of that. You are slowly, systematically replacing the worn-out tools in your toolbox with high-end precision instruments. But to know which tools to use and how they actually sound in the wild, you have to hear how the experts build the house. Which leads us to the next foundational principle, rule number 2, the absolute necessity of high-volume exposure.
Which is why our second mandate is understanding why continuous listening is the non-negotiable backbone of fluency. If we step back and look at developmental linguistics, it is believed by researchers that massive continuous auditory exposure is exactly how we all learned our first native language. A baby doesn't start by studying verb conjugation tables.
That would be a very strange baby.
Right. A baby spends roughly a year to 18 months doing absolutely nothing but listening. They are absorbing the rhythm, the cadence, the pitch, and the structural patterns of the language long before they ever attempt to produce a single coherent word. They internalize the entire architectural structure of the language subconsciously.
And that brings us to a fantastic higher level word for our listeners to master subconscious. It's an adjective that refers to the part of the mind that you aren't fully aware of, but which deeply influences your actions, your reflexes, and your understanding. For example, through massive listening, you subconsciously absorb English grammar. You aren't sitting there actively trying to memorize a rule. Your brain's pattern recognition software is just running quietly in the background, cataloging how the language works.
That's exactly how it works.
But I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of our listeners. If I'm an executive working 60 hours a week, I will say, I don't have 18 months to sit around like a baby and just listen to people talk. I am insanely busy. I barely have time to sleep, let alone carve out 2 hours a day for dedicated listening practice.
And that is the exact friction point that stops most adults. But the beauty of this principle is that it does not require you to sit frozen at a desk, staring at a notebook in a quiet room. You can completely bypass the need for dedicated, scheduled study time by aggressively utilizing what we call dead time.
Let's really unpack the concept of dead time, because once you see it, it completely changes how you view your day. Dead time is any block of time where your physical body is occupied doing a low-level automated task, but your cognitive brain is completely free.
Exactly. It's hidden time.
We are talking about your 30-minute morning commute, whether your hands are on a steering wheel or you are standing on a crowded subway. That's an hour a day right there. We are talking about the 45 minutes you spend at the gym on the treadmill. We were talking about folding laundry, walking the dog, doing the dishes, waiting in line to pick up your kids. If you actually run the numbers and add up all those fragmented 15-minute blocks of time, you are easily looking at 10 to 15 hours every single week of unused cognitive bandwidth.
Exactly. You don't need a desk. You need a highly curated, portable audio library. We're carrying incredibly powerful computers in our pockets. Your smartphone is your mobile immersion environment. But the critical variable is what you put in that library.
What should be in it?
Well, if you want to achieve C1 or C2 professional fluency, your audio library shouldn't just be random pop music or overly simplified English learning podcasts designed for beginners. It should be rigorous industry podcasts specifically relevant to your field. It should be high-level audiobooks, recorded university lectures, or even the quarterly earnings calls from public companies in your sector. By flooding your dead time with high-quality, professional-level English, your subconscious begins to map out exactly how complex sentences are constructed, how professionals pause for effect, and how they navigate difficult questions.
Okay, let me pause us here because we've just covered our first major milestones in this blueprint. If you are finding value in this deep dive so far, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel right now. Because coming up in the next 5 minutes, we are going to pivot into reading, and you're going to learn how to completely eliminate student fatigue by changing what you read. Plus, we are going to reveal a highly unconventional technique using movie scripts to master the messy reality of native-speaking rhythms.
That transition from auditory input to visual input reading is a crucial bridge to cross for rule number 3. Because while massive listening builds your auditory intuition and your feel for the rhythm, reading allows you to freeze the language. It allows you to analyze complex sentence structures and absorb dense vocabulary at your own completely controlled pace.
That makes total sense. You can't pause someone talking in real life, but you can linger on a page.
Exactly. However, there is a massive psychological roadblock that highly driven Type A adults hit when they try to integrate reading into their English acquisition, and it brings us to the necessity of enjoyment. Simply put, you must read for pleasure, not for punishment.
I know exactly the dynamic you are talking about. When a highly successful, ambitious person decides they need to level up their English, what is their immediate instinct? They go online and they buy a massive 500-page, incredibly dry academic textbook. Or they force themselves to read dense, boring historical articles that they have absolutely zero personal interest in, simply because they view it as the vegetables they have to eat. They think if it's not painful, it's not working.
And that mindset is the fastest, most guaranteed route to severe student fatigue. We have to look closely at the neuroscience of learning to understand why this fails. When you view English purely through the lens of assessment, when you treat it like a grueling high-stakes test, you have to pass to prove your worth. Your brain activates its high-stress analytical circuits.
Oh, and stress is never good for learning.
Right. When you are stressed, your body produces cortisol. And in the specific context of language acquisition, high stress physically alters how your brain processes data. It raises what top linguists refer to as the affective filter. Think of the affective filter as a neurological defensive wall. When you are stressed, bored to tears, or highly anxious about failing, this wall goes up, and it physically blocks the hippocampus from encoding new language data into long-term memory. You are literally fighting a losing battle against your own biology.
That is a stunning realization. Forcing yourself to read a boring textbook out of a sense of duty literally triggers a biological response that prevents you from learning the language effectively. You are wasting your time because your brain has shut the door.
Percent.
So the clear solution is that relevance fuels enjoyment. You have to read things that genuinely spark your curiosity and lower that affective filter. If you are a senior financial analyst, you should completely abandon generic ESL short stories and start reading complex economic white papers, the Wall Street Journal, or detailed crypto market analyses. If you are a senior software developer, read open source documentation, system architecture breakdowns, or tech blogs that you would eagerly read in your native language anyway.
Precisely. Because when you read about a topic you already deeply care about, the stress response vanishes. The cortisol drops. Your affective filter lowers completely. You enter a psychological state of flow, and your brain stops viewing the English words as hostile obstacles to be memorized and starts viewing them merely as transparent vehicles delivering the high-value information you actually want to consume.
That brings up a great idiom. We should talk about absorbing information like a sponge.
Yes, that's a perfect fit here.
If someone says you soak up information like a sponge, it means you easily absorb new knowledge. When you read about a topic you love, your brain soaks up new vocabulary like a sponge because the resistance is gone. But let me challenge the practicality of this for a moment. If I am an intermediate or low advanced learner and I suddenly dive into a highly technical 40-page economic white paper from the Federal Reserve, isn't there a massive risk that the vocabulary will be so overwhelmingly difficult that it causes severe stress anyway? Won't my affective filter shoot right back up?
That is a very valid structural concern, which is why there is a golden rule of thumb for difficulty management when selecting your reading material. When you are reading for pleasure and subconscious acquisition, if you have to look up more than one word per sentence on average, the text is fundamentally too difficult for your current level.
More than one word per sentence is the cutoff.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of reading. If you are stopping every 4 words to pull out your phone and check a dictionary app, you completely destroy the narrative flow. The enjoyment evaporates instantly, the cognitive load spikes, and the stress returns. You want to aim for what we call seamless integration. You must find material where you effortlessly understand about 90 to 95% of the vocabulary.
Why 95%? Why not 100?
Because that 5% margin of unknown words is where the magical acquisition happens. When you know 95% of the context surrounding an unknown word, your brain can usually accurately guess the meaning of that new word without a dictionary. And neurologically speaking, inferring a word's meaning from context creates a much deeper, more robust neural pathway than simply reading a sterile dictionary definition. You want the language to stretch you just slightly, not break you.
Seamless integration. I love that framework. You are making English a natural, invisible part of your existing intellectual life, not an extra painful chore added to the end of a long day. And that concept of seamless integration brings us perfectly to rule number 4, studying excellent native-level resources. Specifically, I want to talk about utilizing movies, dramas, and television shows.
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, but I have to ask a challenging question here because this sounds a bit like snake oil to some people. Millions of people all over the globe watch Hollywood films every single day. But how many people actually use them as a rigorous, serious study tool instead of just turning on their native language subtitles, entirely spacing out on the couch and eating popcorn?
Statistically, very, very few. And that represents a massive missed opportunity for adult learners because film and high-quality television dramas offer something that written textbooks and slow-paced ESL audios simply cannot provide. They offer authentic, highly contextualized, emotionally charged human interaction.
Right, it's real communication.
But your skepticism is entirely warranted. Just passively watching a 2-hour movie with subtitles in your native language does absolutely zero for your advanced fluency. Your brain just reads the subtitles and ignores the English audio track entirely. The secret to unlocking the power of film is a very specific methodology. It requires treating the movie not as Friday night entertainment, but as a rich, dense linguistic data set.
So what is the actual step-by-step method? How do I turn a Netflix drama into a C1 fluency generator? Walk us through it.
The process actually starts before you even turn on the screen. First, you must go online and find the actual written movie script or the TV show transcript. There are massive free databases available online with almost every script imaginable. You do not tackle the whole movie. You select a 10 to 20-minute scene, perhaps a tense boardroom negotiation, or a complex legal argument. You print that section of the script out and you read it first. You treat that 10-page document exactly like a textbook chapter. You identify any unknown idioms, strange phrasal verbs, or complex industry vocabulary, and you learn their precise definitions beforehand.
So you are completely front-loading the analytical work. You are clearing away the vocabulary hurdles before the scene even plays, so you aren't scrambling to understand basic meaning while the actors are talking at 100 miles an hour.
Exactly. You establish the baseline of comprehension first. Then and only then do you actually watch that specific 10 to 20-minute section of the film.
Mm.
But here is the critical, often uncomfortable part of the methodology. You don't just watch it once and move on. You watch that exact same scene repeatedly.
Repeatedly. Okay, practically speaking, isn't that going to drive people completely crazy? Watching the same 10-minute scene of a corporate drama 4 times in a row sounds like a quick way to absolutely hate the movie.
It requires discipline, undoubtedly,
Mhm.
but it is necessary because something neurologically magical happens around the third or fourth viewing. During the first viewing, your brain is just trying to follow the plot. By the third viewing, you already know exactly what the words mean because you studied the script and you know exactly what's going to happen in the story.
Right, so the suspense is gone.
Exactly. Because that cognitive burden is lifted, your auditory processing centers are suddenly entirely freed up to focus entirely on how the actors are delivering those words. You start to notice the incredible messy subtleties of fast-paced native speech.
Let's give our listeners some high-level C1 terminology for what they're actually observing when they do this exercise, because written English and spoken English are almost 2 different languages. When you loop a scene, you start to notice 2 things: chunking and prosody.
Yes, those are the keys.
Chunking is how native speakers group words together naturally. When we speak, we absolutely do not speak word by word. We smash words together into chunks of meaning. And prosody refers to the rhythm, the stress, and the melodic intonation of speech. It is the music of the language.
And traditional grammar textbooks simply do not and cannot teach this reality. A textbook might teach you the formal written phrase, "What are you going to do about it?" But when you watch a high-paced legal drama and the actors are arguing, you hear them aggressively chunk the words and apply natural prosody. It comes out sounding like, "What you can do about it?" Or even faster, "What you gonna do about it?" Yeah, that is exactly how it sounds in reality.
If you have never studied the formal script and then listened repeatedly to the audio reality of how those specific words physically merge and mutate in fast English, you'll be completely lost when a native speaker uses that exact rhythm in a real-world boardroom conversation. You will know all the words on paper, but your ears won't recognize them.
That makes absolute sense. By looping the scene, you are mapping the clean, formal, written script onto the messy, beautiful, chaotic reality of spoken English. You are training your ear to decode the blurred lines between words. And if you do that consistently, your ability to understand native speakers at full speed, even when they mumble or speak quickly, will absolutely skyrocket. It really is a game changer.
And coming up in the next 5 minutes, we are going to pivot away from the mechanics and learn about the mental game of fluency. Specifically, we will look at how much time you actually need to study every day, and I'll share a 4-step psychological trick to ensure you never lose your motivation again.
Moving into the mental game, which is rule number 5, is absolutely vital because you can have the most perfectly curated synonym swaps, the ultimate professional audio library, and a massive stack of movie scripts on your desk. But if you abandon all of these habits after 2 weeks, you gain absolutely nothing.
True, consistency is everything.
This brings us to the most unglamorous but scientifically backed principle. Consistency is key. It sounds like a tired motivational cliche, but linguistically and neurologically, it is a hard, inescapable scientific truth. Advanced fluency is not born from brief moments of intense, panicked effort. It is born from sustained, daily, low-stress exposure.
When you say intense, panicked effort, you are referring to the classic adult learner mistake, aren't you? The guilt-driven cycle. You feel guilty all week, Monday through Friday, because you were too busy working to study. So to make up for it, you lock yourself in a room and try to cram vocabulary for 3 straight hours on a Sunday afternoon until your eyes bleed.
Exactly. And from a neurological standpoint, cramming for 3 hours once a week does very little to build the dense neural pathways required for spontaneous, fluid speech. Think about how the brain physically builds memories. It relies on a process called myelination, where a fatty substance coats the neural pathways that are used frequently, making the electrical signals travel faster.
Okay, so it's like greasing the tracks.
Exactly. Your brain only heavily myelinates pathways that it believes are crucial for your daily survival. If you only look at English once a week, your brain tags it as low-priority information and starts pruning those connections by Tuesday. Your brain needs regular, daily signaling that this language is a constant, necessary part of your environment. It's believed by experts in language acquisition that the magic number for rapid, noticeable progression is roughly 1 hour of engagement a day.
1 hour a day. Now let's be real. To a busy executive with a 60-hour work week, a spouse, and 2 kids, an hour sounds like an absolute laughable impossibility. Finding a solid 60-minute block of free time feels harder than finding gold.
It does sound intimidating at first.
But let's break down how achievable this actually is based on the systems we just discussed. We're not talking about a solid, painful 60-minute block of time sitting at a desk with a highlighter. We are talking about a fragmented, seamlessly integrated hour.
Right, you break it up.
Let's do the math. It's 15 minutes of listening to an industry podcast in your car during your morning commute that's utilizing dead time. It's 10 minutes of reading a tech blog that you actually enjoy while eating your sandwich on your lunch break that's lowering the effective filter. It's 20 minutes of watching a scene from a movie while you fold laundry in the evening that's mastering prosody. And it's 5 minutes reviewing your synonym swaps aloud while you wait for your morning coffee to brew. You add those tiny, frictionless fragments up, and you have easily hit your hour without ever formally studying.
It is entirely achievable when you aggressively leverage dead time and seamless integration. When you break it down into modular components like that, it feels less like a monumental, exhausting task and more like a series of small, highly productive micro-habits. And the compounding effect of that daily, varied exposure reading, listening, speaking leads to exponential, undeniable improvement over a 6-month period.
But let's address the elephant in the room. Even with the best, most frictionless micro-habits, everyone eventually hits a wall. Which brings us to rule number 6, the psychology of how to stay motivated over the long haul. I want to talk about hitting the motivation wall. This predictably happens to almost everyone about 3 to 4 months into a new endeavor.
Without fail.
The initial burst of excitement fades, the dopamine of starting something new drops off, and the reality of the daily grind sets in. Often, the traditional advice you hear from internet productivity gurus is just to grit your teeth, be disciplined, and push through it. And real quick, push through is a great phrasal verb to know. It means to continue doing something hard even when you are exhausted or bored. But relying solely on raw willpower to push through is a guaranteed strategy for failure, because willpower is a finite biological resource.
You are entirely correct. Willpower burns out quickly, especially if you are using it all day at your demanding job. If you try to just muscle your way through the granular daily friction of language learning day after day, week after week, your brain will eventually rebel and you will quit.
So what's the alternative?
To sustain deep motivation over a multi-year journey to C2 fluency, you must execute a profound, deliberate shift in your psychological focus. You have to shift your attention away from the micro-level difficulty, the annoyance of memorizing a new word, the frustration of struggling to understand a fast sentence, and redirect it entirely toward the massive, life-altering macro-level benefits of achieving that fluency. You have to stop connecting the language to its shore and start connecting it to your ultimate future identity.
So how do we systematically do that? It's easy to say focus on the positive, but how do we build an actual emotional safety net so we don't quit when we're tired on a Wednesday evening?
There is a very specific 4-step motivation exercise that acts as a powerful psychological anchor. It sounds simple, but it manipulates your brain's dopamine reward system beautifully. Step 1 is simply to take a clean sheet of physical paper, or open a new digital document and write a specific, orienting heading at the top. What specific tangible benefits will I receive when I become highly fluent in English?
Okay, that sets the intention. What is step 2?
Step 2 is where you write out explicit, highly detailed downstream benefits. And the absolute key word here is detailed. You cannot just write, I will get a better job or I will make more money. That is far too vague. It carries zero emotional weight for your brain.
So it has to be really specific.
Exactly. You need to write something hyper-specific like, in 5 years, I will have the flawless linguistic authority to be promoted to lead the global marketing team at a Fortune 500 tech company headquartered in New York, commanding a $250,000 salary and having the respect of the board. You need to paint a vivid cinematic picture of the exact future you are trying to purchase with your daily effort.
I see. The more specific it is, the more real it feels to your brain's reward center. It stops being an abstract grammar exercise and instantly transforms into a concrete career strategy. What is step 3?
Step 3 leverages the way our human brains prioritize visual information over text. It is visual goal setting. You go into Google Images and you aggressively hunt for pictures that represent those exact, highly specific benefits. Find a high-resolution picture of the exact dream car you want to buy with that salary. Find a photo of the skyline of the specific city you want to relocate your family to. Find the corporate logo of the exact company you want to work for, or the specific title on a business card. Print those images out in color and place them directly under your written sentences.
You are essentially building a corporate vision board, but it is hyper-focused solely on the specific results unlocked by your English fluency. And step 4 is how we use it, right?
Step 4 is the daily execution. You review this specific document, you read the sentences, and you look at the images every single morning for just a minute or two right before you start your day or your first English habit.
That is brilliant because it acts as a preemptive strike against cognitive resistance. Before your brain can even begin to generate excuses telling you that studying is boring or that you are too tired today or that it doesn't matter, you are aggressively reminding yourself of exactly what is on the line. English is no longer a painful hurdle you have to jump over. English becomes the necessary vehicle to your destiny. It is the master key unlocking that specific, beautiful future.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, coming up in the next 5 minutes, we are going to tackle what is arguably the most confusing, frustrating part of advanced English idioms, and we are going to reveal why everything you know about studying grammar is probably completely wrong.
Let's dive right into idioms, which brings us to rule number 7. For many adult learners, idioms are the absolute bane of their professional existence. But the hard truth is, if you want to operate at a high executive level, they are completely unavoidable.
Oh, they're everywhere.
They heavily permeate professional environments, especially in North American corporate culture. They are deeply woven into the fabric of daily communication. They are used to soften criticism, build in-group camaraderie, and express complex dynamics quickly.
It is so incredibly true. I've seen this happen. You can have absolutely perfect textbook grammar, pronunciation can be flawless, but if you don't understand the specific idioms flying across the boardroom table, a single missed phrase can completely derail your comprehension of an entire strategic meeting. You are left completely in the dark while everyone else is nodding.
Exactly. Let's look at 2 incredibly common, high-frequency business idioms that you will hear constantly if you work in an English-speaking corporate environment.
Okay, the first one is a phrasal idiom to circle back. When a senior colleague says, "We are out of time, so we need to circle back on that budget issue," they're obviously not asking you to stand up and walk in a physical circle around the room.
No, definitely not.
To circle back means to revisit a topic later, usually after more information has been gathered, or simply when there is more time on the agenda. It is an incredibly polite, corporate way of pausing a discussion without aggressively shutting someone down.
And the second one is deeply embedded in corporate strategy, low-hanging fruit. Imagine a massive apple tree. The apples at the very top of the tree are hard to reach. They require a ladder, time, and effort. But the apples at the bottom, the low-hanging fruit, can be easily picked by anyone walking by.
Right, they're just sitting right there.
In business, if a project manager says, "Let's grab the low-hanging fruit first to show some quick progress to the board," they are talking about targeting the absolute easiest tasks or the most easily achievable goals first. It's a strategy to build early momentum with minimal effort.
If you are sitting in a high-pressure meeting and you translate low-hanging fruit literally in your head, your brain is going to completely derail trying to figure out why the CEO is suddenly talking about agriculture and apple farming during a software launch.
Precisely. And this leads to a very important, liberating point about how adult learners should study idioms. Your goal, initially, is comprehension first, production second.
Oh, that's a huge relief.
It is. You do not have to aggressively force yourself to use idioms in your own speech immediately. In fact, using an idiom incorrectly or using one that is outdated or too casual for the setting can actually hinder communication and make you sound incredibly awkward. Your primary objective is simply to build a massive recognition database of the hypercommon idioms in your specific field so that your listening comprehension remains unbroken when others use them.
Comprehension over production. That takes a massive amount of pressure off the learner. You don't have to be the one dropping idioms, you just have to know what they mean. Now, I want to point out to our listeners that we have deliberately skipped rule number 8 from our outline to go straight to rule number 9, which is learn the grammar rule, then listen to it. We skipped 8 because traditionally an 8th rule might focus on isolated speaking practice, but speaking practice is already heavily built into reading aloud from rule 1 and the movie shadowing in rule 4. We want to dedicate our time right now to a massive grammatical paradigm shift.
Rule 9 addresses perhaps the most universal, infuriating frustration among advanced language learners, knowing a complex grammar rule intellectually, easily passing a multiple-choice test on it, but then completely failing to use it correctly in spontaneous live conversation.
So why does it happen?
Why does your brain betray you in the moment? To understand this, we have to look closely at the neuroscience of how memory actually works. There are two entirely different types of memory storage systems at play here.
Let's break these two systems down, because this is the core of the problem. First, there is declarative memory. This is the memory of raw facts and information. It is what happens when you read a grammar rule in a textbook, like use the present perfect tense for an action that started in the past and continues to the present. You know the fact. You can declare the rule.
Exactly. It's factual knowledge.
Let's use an analogy. Declarative memory is like buying a heavy textbook on how to play golf. You can sit in your living room, read the book, and perfectly memorize the exact angle your elbows should be at and how you should grip the club. You know all the facts about the golf swing.
Exactly. But here is the critical failure point. Language production, actually speaking at normal speed under pressure, does not rely on declarative memory. It relies almost entirely on procedural memory.
Procedural memory. Tell us about that.
Procedural memory is the memory of skills and motor functions. It is how you know how to ride a bike, or type on a keyboard without looking at your fingers, or drive a manual transmission car. When you type an email, you don't consciously think, where is the letter T? Your body just performs the procedure automatically.
That makes a lot of sense.
Going back to your golf analogy, procedural memory is the muscle memory built by actually standing on a driving range and swinging a club 10,000 times. When you are in a high-pressure tournament, you don't have time to recite the textbook in your head, you just swing. Advanced fluency fundamentally requires procedural memory.
This is such a massive aha moment for anyone who has struggled. When you study a grammar workbook, you are only filling up your declarative memory. You are just reading the golf manual. But when you are in a fast-paced, aggressive financial meeting, you don't have the 3 seconds required to search your declarative memory, consciously recall the rule for the third conditional, manually translate the vocabulary, build the sentence in your head, and then speak. By the time you do that, the conversation has moved on. You need the grammar to be a lightning-fast procedural reflex.
Exactly. You are trying to perform a physical, real-time skill using a slow, analytical brain system. It will fail every time under pressure. So Rule 9 provides a specific 5-step audio grammar technique to physically transfer grammar from slow declarative knowledge to fast procedural skill.
Okay, let's walk through these 5 steps to build that procedural reflex. Step 1, read and understand the grammar rule. You still have to start with the concept. You need to know what the rule is theoretically supposed to do.
Yes, you establish the baseline fact. But step 2 is where the magic begins. You create a high-quality audio recording of clear, simple example sentences utilizing that specific rule. You can record yourself saying them, or, even better, use a high-quality text-to-speech AI program, or ask a native-speaking friend to record them onto your phone. You want clean, perfect auditory examples of the target grammar.
Let's ground this. Let's say I'm constantly messing up the third conditional, which is incredibly common. The structure is, if I had known, I would have gone. I write out 5 different, highly relevant business sentences using that exact structure, and I get an audio recording of them. What is step 3?
Step 3 is high-volume, massive auditory repetition. You listen to those specific 5 examples 50 to 100 times.
100 times? I have to step in again. That sounds incredibly excessive and incredibly boring. Why on earth do I need to hear the same 5 sentences 100 times?
It sounds excessive, but is neurologically necessary because high volume entirely bypasses your brain's slow translation mechanism.
Bypasses it completely.
Yes. When you hear a complex grammatical structure 3 times, you are analyzing it, When you hear it 100 times, your brain stops analyzing the individual words entirely, and you start recognizing the rhythm, the cadence, and the deep structural pattern of the grammar. The neural pathway heavily myelinates. You connect the sound pattern directly to the underlying meaning, completely eliminating the middleman of translating it back into your native language.
Yeah.
You're forcing the language into your procedural memory.
Wow, you are literally rewiring the reflex. Step 4, then, is to briefly check the written rule again for conceptual reinforcement, just to ensure your brain is categorizing the pattern correctly, and then you go right back to listening.
And step 5 is simply to move to the next grammar rule once the current one feels completely automatic, once it feels like a reflex you don't have to think about.
That is so powerful.
And the beautiful, elegant synergy here is that you connect this entire process directly to Rule 2. You listen to these grammar tracks during your dead time. You absolutely do not have to sit in a rigid chair for 3 hours to listen to a grammar structure 100 times. You just put the track on repeat while you are driving to work or running on the treadmill.
It is brilliant. You are literally automating your grammar reflexes while waiting in traffic. Well, we are entering our final 5 minutes of learning for this deep dive, and we are going to look at Rule 10, which completely flips traditional vocabulary learning upside down. We are going to show you exactly why learning fewer words actually makes you vastly more fluent.
Rule 10 is the pinnacle of strategic vocabulary expansion. The goal is to increase your word power, but it starts by identifying a massive, fatal flaw in how adults traditionally try to expand their vocabulary when reading.
The traditional method that everyone uses is you are reading a book or an article, you see a word you don't know, you stop reading, you pull out your phone, look it up in a dictionary app, you say, oh, okay, that makes sense, and then you just keep reading.
And from a cognitive science perspective, that is a fundamentally flawed strategy for two major reasons. First, looking up every single unfamiliar word completely disrupts your reading flow, which destroys the enjoyment and raises the affective filter we talked about in Rule 3.
Right, it kills momentum.
And second, because you only encounter that sterile dictionary definition once, and you don't emotionally engage with it, you almost instantly forget it. It vanishes from your short-term memory buffer within minutes. You might vaguely recognize it if you see it again 3 months later, but you will absolutely never be able to spontaneously use it in a meeting. When it comes to active vocabulary, quality completely trumps quantity.
Now, wait a minute. Let me speak on behalf of our highly ambitious A-type listeners right now. Are you seriously telling me the rule is to learn just 5 words a week? If I want to be fluent by next quarter for a massive global promotion, shouldn't I be doing what all the internet forums say? Shouldn't I be downloading massive flashcard decks and drilling 50 new words a day? 5 words a week feels like I'm standing still.
That is the natural instinct of the high achiever, but it leads to a dangerous linguistic illusion. If you try to aggressively memorize 50 disconnected words a day through flashcards, you are building a massive, highly fragile house of cards.
A fragile house of cards. That makes sense.
You are gaining incredibly superficial knowledge. You might be able to pass a multiple-choice vocabulary test on Friday, but in a dynamic, unpredictable conversation, your brain will simply not be able to retrieve those loosely stored, uncontextualized words fast enough to actually use them. They aren't anchored to anything real. Learning just 5 words deeply, intimately, and contextually means you actually own them. They become permanent, unshakable residents in your active procedural vocabulary.
So how do we cross that gap? How do we take true ownership of a word so it's there when we need it? Walk us through the 5-step vocabulary expansion technique.
Step 1. Deliberately and carefully choose just 5 new words to actively learn this week, not 50, 5. And you must choose high-leverage words that are highly relevant to your specific life or professional field.
And step 2.
Step 2. Write a short definition for each word, but crucially, you must use a learner's dictionary, not a standard collegiate dictionary.
That's a really specific constraint. Why a learner's dictionary specifically? What's the difference?
Standard dictionaries are written for native speakers, and they often use incredibly complex, circular, and obscure language to define a word. This just adds unnecessary cognitive load. You end up having to look up the words inside the definition just to understand the original word.
Oh, I've definitely done that before. It's so frustrating.
It is. A learner's dictionary uses much simpler, high-frequency language to explain the core concept. This simpler language aids memory consolidation. You want the definition to be as transparent and frictionless as possible, so your brain focuses all its energy on encoding the new word, rather than struggling to decode the definition itself.
That is a fantastic tip to reduce cognitive load. Okay, so I have my 5 words and my simple definitions. Step 3.
Step 3 is the most powerful, transformative part of the entire process. You must write 5 meaningful, highly relevant, and absolutely true sentences about your own life, your own work, or your own academic research for each of the 5 words.
This is about neurological linkage, right? Episodic memory. If I just write a generic textbook sentence like the boy threw the ball, my brain has no emotional attachment to it and nowhere to file it. But if I write a highly specific true sentence about an argument I had with my actual boss or a specific engineering project I'm working on right now, I am taking that new English word and physically linking it to an existing, deeply established, emotionally charged memory network in my brain.
Precisely. You are anchoring the new vocabulary to your own reality. Makes the word unforgettable. Step 4, review the words, the simple definitions in your 5 highly personalized sentences aloud every single day for 10 minutes. Again, the physical act of speaking them aloud bridges the gap between knowing the word intellectually and being able to physically command your mouth to say it.
And the final step to keep the momentum going.
Step 5. Once you are completely comfortable, once you can use that word in a conversation without any hesitation or mental translation, you remove it from your active list of 5 and replace it with a new word. But you keep a rolling master document of all the words you have mastered for quick monthly refreshers.
It's a relentless conveyor belt of mastery. It seems slow at first glance, but if you actually do the math, 5 deeply owned, highly advanced words a week is 260 permanent, high-level vocabulary words a year. Injecting 260 C1 level words into your active vocabulary completely and utterly changes how you sound in a professional environment.
It absolutely transforms you.
And as promised at the very beginning of our deep dive today, here is the ultimate bonus tip. To get the absolute ultimate results, you need to synthesize these strategies. You need to combine the intense, personalized focus of Rule 10 with the audio repetition tactics of Rule 9.
Yes, this is where it all comes together.
When you write out your 5 weekly words, their definitions, and your highly personalized true sentences, don't just read them from the paper. Record yourself saying them aloud. Then, take that custom audio recording, which is literally the exact vocabulary you need for your specific life, spoken in your own voice, and listen to it repeatedly during your dead time on your commute.
That synthesis is where the real magic happens.
It creates a massive, unstoppable synergy between all the rules we've discussed today. You are listening continuously, which is Rule 2. You are focusing on high relevance to lower the effective filter, Rule 3. You are training procedural memory through audio, Rule 9. And you are building deep, active vocabulary, Rule 10. It practically guarantees deep, permanent retention.
Where all the gears finally click together, right?
Yeah.
We have covered a tremendous amount of structural and psychological ground today, and it is very easy to feel overwhelmed. Like you need to change your entire life and adopt all 10 rules by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, please don't try to do everything tomorrow.
Right. But I want to pose a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go back to your day. If you had to commit to starting just one rule today, just one single shift in your daily habits, which one seamlessly integrates into your busiest schedule right now, providing the absolute highest return on investment for minimal time.
That's a great question to ask yourself.
Is it maximizing your daily commute with continuous listening by creating an audio library using Rule 2? Or is it spending just 2 minutes every morning visualizing your explicit professional benefits to bulletproof your motivation, like in Rule 6? You don't have to do all 10 immediately. You just have to pick one and start today.
We want to see your dedication. We want to know that you are taking action and not just passively listening. Go to the comment box right now and type exactly this: I stay committed. Put it in writing. Make that public declaration.
It's a great first step.
And to test your procedural memory right now based on what we covered, here is your idiom challenge to answer in the comments. If a senior colleague tells you they want to circle back to the low-hanging fruit, what exactly do they want to do? Write your exact answers in the comments section below.
I can't wait to read the answers.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are many more podcasts on my channel. Go check them out and binge watch your favorites. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to make sure you catch our next deep dive as we continue to unpack the strategies of high performers. Keep listening, keep speaking, and we will see you next time.